How about Dodge going out and they get the championship, leaving the sport right now?
Can you take that with the lame duck engine program over at Penske and how they were able to give them good engines, great power to win this championship?
In 2012, Dodge won their first NASCAR Cup Series championship since coming back to the sport in 2001 with Brad Keselowski and Penske Racing that season in 2012. This, of course, was a huge underdog story at the time. Team Penske wasn't really the powerhouse they are today, especially with Dodge only having 2 full-time cars in the series that season, and Brad Keselowski being a newer driver who was probably the best driver all year, beating drivers like Jimmy Johnson, Jeff Gordon for the title in the now iconic Miller Lite blue paint scheme. But of course, as you heard earlier in the video, even after finishing the season the best way you possibly could with winning a Cup Series championship, it would be the final season for Dodge in any sort of NASCAR, and they would ultimately pull out and would not compete at all in 2013. So you may be wondering why Dodge designed the 2013 NASCAR Cup Series stock car and ultimately planned the race in the season when they, of course, announced just a few months later they would actually not be racing at all, and how this thing never raced. We'll answer all those questions today. So, of course, when Dodge re-entered NASCAR back in 2001 for the Cup Series season, after nearly 30 years away from the sport, their main team was Evernham. They had a couple other teams as well. This is well before the whole Penske switch. They ran a bunch of models up until 2012. First of all, with the Dodge Intrepid. Then they switched the better-looking Dodge Charger for 2005. And for some reason, in 2007, they ran the Dodge Avenger for only a half a year because they were doing the split between the Gen 4 and the Gen 5 that season. This is while the Charger was still being run on the Gen 4 car, and the Avenger ultimately never made it to 2008. And then for 2008, they ultimately switched back to the Dodge Charger and ran it for every single season remaining in the COT years, all the way up until, of course, they won the 2012 Cup Series championship with Brad Keselowski. Dodge also won the 2010 Nationwide Series championship again with Brad Keselowski, and in their time they won a ton of nationwide races with Team Penske. Dodge also technically was involved with Ram. They ran Ram trucks, most notably with Brad Keselowski Racing, sensing a theme here. But of course, they ran pretty well and ran up front there in the truck series as well with Ram. And throughout these seasons, Dodge had a great involvement in NASCAR and, of course, was very successful and ultimately planned the race in 2013 and had a brand new Cup car waiting. 2013, of course, would be the first year for NASCAR's brand new Generation 6 Cup Series race car, which would debut in the 2013 Daytona 500. Of course, Ford, Chevrolet, and Toyota all had their cars to unveil and ready, but the first manufacturer to unveil the race car was, of course, Dodge. And at Las Vegas Motor Speedway in the 2013 spring race weekend for the Cup Series, they unveiled their brand new 2013 Dodge Charger Generation 6 NASCAR Cup car that would, of course, race alongside the Ford, Chevrolet, and Toyota. But Dodge, of course, a few days before this big announcement of their brand new race car, got some pretty terrible news that would greatly affect them racing and ultimately made sure this car would never even see the racetrack. And of course, that was that Team Penske, who of course was such a big part of Dodge's recent success in those years, and it still had so much more success to come that season in 2012, of course with Keselowski winning the title that season in Cup, would be switching to Ford and would be leaving the Dodge program entirely for that 2013 season in both Cup Series and the Nationwide Series, and Dodge was left without a team. Like I said before, there were 0 other Cup Series teams that were running Dodge full-time. Robbie Gordon, I believe, had a team, but he only ran a few races. Dodge, of course, had a third Cup Series team with Team Penske that they ran from time to time in the 12 car, but of course that was only part-time, and like I said before, it was a Team Penske car that ultimately switched to Ford for 2013. They got the news that ultimately Team Penske would be running Fords in 2013 around March, so that only gave them less than a full year to find another team, and they were scrambling. They were talking to teams like Furniture Row Racing, who ultimately, of course, went with Chevy in 2013. They tried to bring on Kurt Busch, I believe, as well. Nothing seemed to pan out or work, and of course, they had literally 0 Cup Series teams confirmed for that season, which obviously can't work at all. And after just a few months after debuting this amazing-looking race car, they still had 0 Cup Series teams that wanted to work with them at all in any sort of capacity for 2013, and unfortunately they had to make this very sad announcement.
Hello, I'm Ralph Gills. I'm here as head of SRT Motorsports, and also to speak on behalf of the Dodge brand. We've decided at the end of this year that we'll be withdrawing from the 2013 NASCAR season. Now, we are committed, obviously, to the 2012 season. We're doing very well today. As we speak, we're 7th in the chase, and we're really in a four-way battle for the championship and nationwide as well. So we've had a very solid year with the Penske team. But since their decision to sign with Ford back in March, we've been really trying really hard to put a deal together that would make sense. We've talked to many parties. Matter of fact, we were pleasantly surprised by the amount of people and teams that came our way looking to be associated to our brands. We built a great legacy since 2001 in motorsports. We've had 55 wins that have been very successful with various teams. But our relationship with Penske was very unique. We had a bit of a one-stop shop situation. So replicating that has been quite difficult, trying to get the engine shop, the teams, and all of the different components required to go racing with confidence in 2013. You've made the decision to pull out of the season because we just simply couldn't put a deal together in time to go racing with confidence. Now, I know that's it's with a heavy heart that I tell you this message today, because I realize how many motorsports fans are out there. Matter of fact, many of our own engineers, our own people at our plants and factories are rabid motorsports fans, and have been sending me emails over the last few months willing us on, really encouraging us to figure this out and stay as any way possible in motorsports. We're really sorry and really apologize that we just could not pull the deal together again to operate at our standards.
Of course, this was absolutely heartbreaking news to all Dodge NASCAR fans that were out there still. This was mostly caused by Team Penske not, of course, willing to run with them for 2013 and ultimately switching to Ford, which didn't really work out too well for them that season. Brad Keselowski had a very bad year. Logano wasn't too good either. And of course, Dodge, you never got to see this race car on the racetrack. And I think if Penske never ultimately decided to make the switch, you definitely would have seen this car on track. This video wouldn't be a thing, and Dodge might still be racing in the Cup Series to this day. But at the same time, it was also Dodge's fault for not being able to find any sort of other team to work with, or even try to even start a team themselves. But it's so unfortunate that we never got to see this amazing looking race car on the track, with especially some real paint schemes as well, which would look even better than the initial wrap that it had on. In my personal opinion, this is the best looking Gen 6 car out of the Toyota, Ford, Chevys, and of course the Dodges that there were. And I'm so sad this thing never actually saw the track. Even though Dodge, of course, left NASCAR at the end of 2012, pulling out of every single series, Cup, nationwide, and the Truck Series, smaller teams, especially MBM Motorsports in the Xfinity Series, ran Dodge bodies all the way up until the finale in 2018 in the Xfinity Series, which was 6 years later after Dodge initially left the sport. They were still allowed to run these bodies, which was just so cool. I've made videos on these types of cars. They're called zombie cars, the Dodge Zombie, this is specifically called. This was also the same in the Truck Series with the Ram Zombies, which went all the way up until 2016. Not quite as long as Xfinity, but still very awesome. This now brings us to the present day, 2026, where Ram is back and racing in the NASCAR Truck Series with Colleague Racing. Of course, they don't have any Cup or Xfinity Series aspirations just yet, but of course, this is definitely a great step in the right direction. It's so nice to see Dodge back in NASCAR in some sort of way with Ram in the Truck Series, with 5 different teams over at Colleague Racing. And of course, one day this will most likely allow Dodge to design a Cup Series or Xfinity Series car and ultimately finally make their return to NASCAR Cup Series action for the first time since winning the championship back in 2012. But time will only tell if they'll ever officially announce that they're coming back to the Cup Series. I think most of us can all sure hope they can, and maybe we'll finally see Dodge back on a NASCAR Cup Series track. I would also love to see Dodge take some inspiration from their 2013 Gen 6 car that never ran and put it maybe to their new Gen 7 car. That would be really cool to see. That will just about wrap up this video. Would love to see Dodge back in NASCAR. Comment down below your thoughts on all of that, and I will see you guys next time.